exercise.
Because what you have there is true collaboration.
That's correct.
Whenever I talk to leaders, often letting go of certain things is the hardest part. In other words, we get recognized for doing something and we enjoy it and we're very good at it. And then they say, this is great. Now we want you to do something where you're not doing that anymore.
Well, that's really an excellent point. I think that anyone who wants to succeed in their leadership development has to recognize that there's far more to the responsibility of being a leader in a complex organization than just managing those departments and those areas of responsibility that fall under you on the table of organization. But in order to succeed as a leader, you really need to be perceived as someone who thinks really well beyond those areas that you are formally responsible for. A real leader in a complex healthcare organization always thinks about the institution at large first. And that's something that I think people have a tendency to forget when they're caught up in the day-to-day complexities and challenges and struggles of doing their job effectively. They can sometimes lose sight of the importance of thinking about the big picture, of really looking at the broad responsibility of running a successful organization. And I always find that whenever I see an opportunity to do something in the interests of organizational success and organizational achievement, it's always welcomed by the people above me, and I'm always recognized for having the foresight and the courage to grab onto that challenge and that responsibility. And in order to do that effectively, you need to have a competent and talented team around you that you can delegate to.
And I'm thinking, as I hear you say that, Doug, that if we're not doing that, then we're not really leading. In other words, if what we find ourselves doing more of is checking to see if something was done, then we're really pushing more or maybe cleaning up more than really leading.
Yeah, it's really the difference between managing and leading.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are a lot of very good and capable managers out there who will never be successful leaders. And then there are people that are visionary, that think outside of their areas of responsibility, that have the courage to identify where things aren't going well, have the ability to bring peers together and to have difficult discussions about things that aren't working, about opportunities that need to be addressed through the complexities of this healthcare system that we operate in.
Can you share with us something that you learned from a mentor that you carry with you?
I think probably the most important thing that I've learned from highly successful individuals in leadership positions in healthcare organizations is the importance of really setting clear expectations and then trusting the people around you. I think delegating really creates an atmosphere of trust and confidence. I think staff will have more respect for their leader if they know that trust exists. And I think by delegating to staff and allowing them to learn, either by succeeding or failing, as a leader, you will develop a stronger relationship with your team.
Trust is certainly fundamental to what you're saying in terms of delegating, because delegating really, as I hear you describe that, Doug, is about being able to recognize potential in other people.
Absolutely. I mean, it creates an atmosphere of trust and confidence in a manager's department. Staff are going to have more respect for their leader if they know that that trust exists. Ultimately, by delegating to staff and allowing them to learn, they'll look up to their leader and respect them for allowing them to grow.
Very well said, Doug. What is the difference between having a coach from someone such as Caliper and a coach who's inside of the organization?
Well, having an external coach, I think, is really the better approach because it really eliminates the tendency to be cautious about what you share about yourself. I mean, to be honest, we have to look ourselves in the mirror and we have to recognize our shortcomings. But we have to vocalize and verbalize that those vulnerabilities are there. And it's very difficult, again, for people in positions of leadership and authority to admit that they've got areas of weakness, that they have things that need improving. And by having an external coach, it's very comfortable talking about those issues because obviously it's confidential. You can be very candid with that individual. That individual can be very candid with you, which I think allows you to hear things that you wouldn't necessarily hear from your direct superior.
Is there also sort of a provoking or a pushing that goes on?
There definitely is. And I think that's what makes a really effective coach. It's somebody who can say very candidly, look, here's what the feedback is telling us about you and about your performance. This is what your peers are saying. This is what your direct reports, the people that work for you, are saying about areas that you can improve, and can really hold you to task to be completely open to acknowledging that and ultimately developing a plan to improve in those areas. So I think a really effective coach is someone who can push you, who can tell you things you may not want to hear, but ultimately, in the end, is really invested in your success.
Was there a time, Doug, when you realized that you then became the mentor?
Absolutely. I was fortunate enough to hire an individual to join my team who actually came to Central Maine Healthcare from a non-healthcare industry. Clearly, in evaluating this individual's experience, skill set, aptitude, competencies, reviewing their Caliper profile feedback, it became evident to me that this individual really had the qualities and a good, effective leader. And I really believe that it's important to hire the right people and then let them learn the job. It was somebody that I needed who had a certain skill set that I could then help groom and help develop within my own leadership team. And this individual has really done incredibly well. I've kind of taken her under my wing and have made this a personal crusade of mine to teach this individual about the complexities of running a healthcare organization. So I'm personally approaching this individual as a mentor, and I'm looking continuously at ways to help her grow professionally, to help her learn the complexities of healthcare leadership, because I really see in her someone who in the future will take on greater and greater responsibility. So there's nothing I find more exciting than seeing somebody be successful and seeing somebody grow personally and professionally and really enjoying the journey.
It's great to hear. You can hear that in your voice, that there's a true connection and just a genuine desire on your part to see her grow. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Pat, you're very welcome.
It was great talking to you.
And you too.
George, I love how Doug was able to share his mentoring experience with us. He, as a leader, has been able to set the direction and articulate goals to his team in order to take his company and his people to another level.
Absolutely. A lot of the most successful organizations I see are based around common values that people buy into. It's what they live. I'm thinking of organizations like Google or Apple. It's about innovation, and people go there to work because this is what we believe in. I go there to work because the principles that drive this company are the same as mine. And I see this in a worldwide basis as becoming very, very important. A lot of the companies who are trying to recruit people because they've got a great resume or because maybe they pay higher, that's not buying them the loyalty that they want. I think one of the things that gets people more fired up, and we see this when we look at not-for-profit organizations, which are booming, and it's because people say, I want to work for this organization because this organization does something I believe in.
Right. Take us through, if you would, George, some of the coaching conversations you've been having with leaders. Coaches have become more popular. Some leaders have coaches, an outside voice that comes and can challenge them, perhaps in ways that they might not realize, or help them develop aspects of themselves that they know they need to work on. What issues would a leader be working with so that you can give us a sense of what that dialogue is like and the value an outside coach can bring?
Starting at the beginning, I think there is still a feeling out there that one only gets a coach in business when you've done something wrong, when you've proved that you're not good enough. And we have to spend so much time explaining to people, well, when was the last time you saw a professional golfer or any professional athlete without a coach? Professional teams practice more than they play. Now, the conversation has been over the last 6 months, I'm swamped. They've cut everything. They're asking for more and more and more. We generally find that people have lost their North Star. They're drowning in all the things. Because leaders were good individual contributors, that's where they came from, that's why probably they were promoted.
Right.
And usually most of them have a real sense of ownership and responsibility. You know, they put stuff on their shoulders and they want to do a good job. Sometimes that manifests itself in terms of taking on too much and taking on stuff that isn't their responsibility. So the conversation is usually about, okay, the landscape has changed. You do have fewer resources. The demands are up. Given that, what can you do? What is your responsibility? And what is, quite frankly, a responsibility that you're shouldering that you shouldn't be? because sometimes our own strengths turn against us. If I'm a very responsible person, I can end up taking too much on and end up not being effective to anybody. So a coach very often helps the leader understand, well, hold on a second. I know you would like to do these 15 things, but you'll end up doing all of them 80%, or you could do these 10 things 100%.
That's an interesting point. Let's stay with that, because you said very well that our strengths can limit us. I mean, oftentimes we might think that a coach would help somebody overcome their limitations, but you're starting with the strengths.
Always.
Always starting with the strengths. Very, very interesting. And that the strength that might have gotten you to this position and even might have worked for you last year could get in the way right now. To give us some other examples of strengths and how strengths can get in the way, and then how you work with somebody to recognize that.
Sure. So you've got someone who's very, very good at analyzing data and feels comfortable analyzing data and making decisions based on it. Well, when their responsibilities suddenly become tripled, what they then do is they go to 3 times the data, and it can be physically impossible.
Yes.
You know, so they say, well, but I've always used data to make a decision. I'm good with that. It's like, yes, you are, to a certain point. That's one example. So it would be helping people understand, okay, how much data do you need to make these decisions? Not how much would you like, but how much do you need?
And I'm hearing inside of what you're saying also, George, the notion that there might be a concern there with delegating. In other words, that person might be used to getting their own information, or might be overly responsible, as you said in your first choice. So it's trusting that someone else can bring you the right information, and the information that you need, and the information that you're used to looking for.
That's exactly right. And it's also being able to let go of something that's yours, something that's personal. And what you need to realize is, to what extent is my personal desire to do it this way helping me or limiting me? Sometimes even a really positive drive, if it's not tempered by the ability to reflect, you will not be effective. I absolutely guarantee you. I have yet to meet a successful leader who isn't able to reflect. And as far as I'm aware, even the successful leaders only have 24 hours in the day. They may have some sort of secret potion, but I believe they've got the same 24 hours that we do. I think sometimes people get frightened by it. Sometimes when we're doing programs or coaching, you know, we say, okay, we're going to do some reflection. And it can take a minute or a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And you can reflect so much in a minute and a half. And yet people think, oh, reflections has to be like some sort of meditation thing where you take 4 hours and, you know, we solve the mysteries of the universe. No, it's not. It's just about thinking, okay, what's important here? What do we need to focus on? It can be as little as a minute, and it can be as much as 5 minutes, and you can get an awful lot done. Now, if you cannot make between 1 and 5 minutes per day to reflect on something, that's probably why you're not being that effective as a leader.
What is a conversation like with someone in terms of how do you move from what you were doing before?
Right.
How do you make the change? And can you describe how a leader got sort of that aha, or was it a slow process of letting go of that and creating an organization that was actually better and stronger and became a better leader as a result?
Okay, let me start with just a little bit of theory. These strengths are part of our hardwiring, part of our motivators, okay? They're completely neutral. They're not positive or negative. What's positive or negative are the behaviors. And people confuse their motivators and their personality with their behaviors. They're 2 completely different things. And let me give you an example. I was doing some coaching with a sales and marketing VP in an organization. And this person has got great enthusiasm. I mean, really is one of these people who gets up in the morning and says, let's go for it. I'll be first one out the trenches and into the battle. Now, that's their internal motivator. They're really driven by success. How that manifested itself in certain situations was like a runaway train. If you didn't agree with me, I'm going to run straight over you. And what actually happened was, in conversation with this person, I said, you're like one of these golfers who's got one of those Big Bertha drivers and really knows how to really hit the ball sweetly, 350 yards. But that's the only club that you're using, and it's the only shot you're using. What else do you think you might have in your bag? What other clubs might be more appropriate as you get closer to the green? You know, are there different shots that you can create? But allowing them to see that those strengths in certain situations, you know, when you're standing on the tee 500 yards away, and bring the big berth out and let it rip. There are other situations where maybe a delicate lob wedge might actually bring you the results that you wanted. So take what you know. This goes back to